Just 49 hours to go until the 2025 MLB Trade Deadline. Tons of news to catch up on. The Yankees have already been a part of 3 different trades trying to help their chase for 28. Justin Chevalella, Dylan Price here on the Bomber Boys podcast. Plenty to talk about. Aaron Judge goes down with injury since the last episode. Ryan McMahon becomes a New York Yankee, as does Ahmed Rosario. But before we get into any of that, Mr. Dylan, how are you today?
I'm feeling good, Justin. I'm feeling fired up. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the discourse on Yankees Twitter. I don't know if it's just the way this last week has gone since you and I got together in Yankee land, but I'm fired up. I'm just kind of ready to uncork it today. It feels like one of those days that, we were kind of going back and forth in anticipation for Thursday's show. And, with a 2-show week, I was like, yeah, maybe we'll keep it shorter. And then about 10 minutes ago, I texted you and said, oh, this is going to be a D1 complaining session today. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. How are you?
I'd have to say I'm the same way. I've been kind of stewing all day, getting ready to do this. And I think you got a little bit of a preview in it with the text messages sent back and forth. And right before I was about to press record, I started going on a little tangent too. And I was like, wait, no, let's just get into it. And we'll get into that tangent in a little while. But I could say that I am also relatively fired up as we shoot this on this Tuesday night, 5:30 p.m. We get started, just to give that time an hour and a half before the Yankees go for game 2 against the Tampa Bay Rays after yet another disappointing performance against a division opponent, dropping to 11-19 within the American League East. But that is not where we even start. We start with the news over the weekend that the MVP, Aaron Judge, placed on the 10-day IL with a flexor strain. He's expected to have to be the DH when he returns, which is he's eligible for on August 5th. A lot going on, and we kind of talked about it. I think we got a chance to at least briefly mention that something was up with Judge, that he had winced, or that may have happened the night that we last recorded last week. So we mentioned that he had winced. You and I had talked about it. Next thing you know, he has to DH a game. Then he's got to, miss a day, and we find out he's going to get an MRI, and sure enough, it looked like a lot worse than it is. I'm still not sure it's just a flexor strain. I have my own speculation, which obviously you don't want to speculate, but I have my own speculations on it. We start with the pinstripe panic meter. Where's the panic meter now that Aaron Judge is out for 10 days with the elbow injury that, as Jeff Passan called it, is normally a precursor to Tommy John?
Luka Doncic was in the booth yesterday with Michael Kay and the team, and he was on the field with Aaron Judge prior to the game. So for him, in honor of him, I'll go a 7.7, and that is a 2.7 decrease, or 2.3 increase rather. Some quick math for you there. 2.3 decrease from where I was at on Saturday throughout the course of the day. I was a flat 10.0. The season was over. I was kind of in the same boat. It seems like the Yankees were rumored to be. I was already saying, okay, get rid of Goldie. Maybe not Belly. I think they need to re-up Bellinger. And I think that's something you and I both reiterate pretty much weekly at this point with how well he's played. But I think it was a 10, because we've seen a season without Aaron Judge. When he ran into the infamous wall out there at Dodger Stadium, the season kind of went off the rails from there, to say the very least. You're already in this season without Garrett Cole. Clark Schmidt's out for the season. Guys who you've expected to be a little bit more productive haven't been in this last stretch of this season here, June to now at the end of July, where we're talking to you today. So for me, it was the brakes are off, the train's going off the tracks, everything's going into disarray. And if number 99 isn't going to play again this season, the season's over. And then it was, okay, it's a flexor strain. But as you said, there's still cause for significant concern, because with the Yankees, it is not just a flexor strain. With the Yankees, it is not just a minor injury where we'll expedite him back. No, with the Yankees, there's always something more to the story on the injury front. And right now, this feels exactly like that. It feels too good to be true for Aaron Boone to be saying today on Talking Yanks that, he's hitting off the tee, and, it's, reported just within the last hour, it seems like he could be good for August 5th. Yeah, I call bullshit on it. I think there's going to be probably the most profanity we've had in an episode yet today in Bomber Boys history because I call complete bullshit on it. I think Aaron Judge might be okay. He might honestly make it the whole rest of the season and even into a potential postseason run, but I still call you know what on it because I do feel like there's going to be more to the story with this injury with Judge, even if it comes out in the offseason that he was taking cortisone shots just to get back and that his shoulder's never going to be at the same place again, or the flexor's never going to be at the same place again, rather. So I think there's a lot of concern that this could be the tip of the iceberg. And I know the big fear is UCL. I know that's probably where you'll go in that direction, so I won't steal your thunder. But 7-7 feels low compared to where I was at the other day. It still feels low right now. And I'm still concerned. I think he'll get back. I think even at DH, he still has more value than anybody else on the team, but it's still a cause for concern for me because with the Yankees, there's always more to the injury front.
Well, you honored Luka Doncic after one of the weirdest cameos I think Yes Network has ever done for a Yankee game. I might have to honor Aaron Judge and go 9.9 here. I mean, let's be real. Aaron Judge is the New York Yankees in 2025. Yeah, there's been spectacular performances from other players at different times. What Max Fried was able to do, or has been able to do, except for the month of July, was incredible. You know, Carlos Rodon as well, Cody Bellinger being able to, you know, put out consistent numbers. And I can name a couple more, but at the end of it, the Yankees, they breathe and they die with Aaron Judge. And that's the simple fact is Aaron Judge was on pace to be the MLB MVP or the AL MVP rather. And I still think it's possible. It's only going to be 10 days, hopefully. But at the same time, like this is an injury that I think could affect the Yankees for years to come. Like you just said, Jeff Passan wrote a book. I have it upstairs. It's called The Arm. And he wrote a book going into, you know, the effects of the elbow and baseball because it's an unnatural throwing motion. That's why we see so many injuries to the elbow in baseball and not, let's say, softball or football to you know, compare because those are more natural. I mean, it's unnatural to throw a baseball and, you know, especially at the velocities they do it, especially Aaron Judge throwing those lasers from right field. And it just feels, and he said it on ESPN, it typically, not always, but it many times is a precursor to a full UCL, you know, tear or sprain or anything and potentially Tommy John. And that's the concern for the Yankees. And, you know, I texted you the moment we found out about this over the weekend. And I said, if it is Tommy John before we found out it was just a flexor strain, then what the Yankees have to do is take Aaron Judge out of right field and make him a first baseman and designated hitter, just like the Phillies did with Bryce Harper a couple of years ago, coming off of his Tommy John surgery, because that's what got him back in the lineup a lot sooner. Now, we don't have to go that far just yet, but there's plenty of reason to be concerned because let's get into the rest of this year. Aaron Judge comes back on August 5th, best case scenario, right? Where's Giancarlo Stanton going? The right field, left field? Certainly not center. We can cross that one out. But, I mean, they're talking about playing Giancarlo in the outfield. That is 2 days in the outfield before he's hurt. Remember that he missed most of this season with the tennis elbows in both arms. He can't be throwing a ball, much the less he can barely run. We've seen that on the base paths. How's that going to translate to right field? So you're going to put Giancarlo out in the outfield. Every Yankee fan seems to have a problem with Jason Dominguez, you know, just a little foreshadowing for later in the show. But every Yankee fan seems to have a little problem with Jason Dominguez's fielding. What's going to happen if Giancarlo is out in the outfield? But if you don't put him in the outfield, then you have his millions and millions of dollars sitting on the bench to be a pinch hitter. The Yankees, who don't like wasting money, and it seems like it might be a problem here at the deadline with, you know, what we're hearing and or what we're lacking to hear about a big move to this point. They're going to put millions on the bench to be a pinch hitter. That messes up the season. You also have to think about the fact that if that's the way, if Judge can only DH for, it seems like maybe 10 days or so, who's coming up to actually play the outfield? Because it's not going to be Stanton every day. And Ahmed Rosario can play the outfield, but do you bring up Spencer Jones? Well, the Yankees seem to not want to do that either. And right now he's dealing with some back spasms. He's back in the lineup tonight, but they don't seem to want to do that anyway. This has a ripple effect beyond just Aaron Judge being on, you know, his production being out. It has an effect on Stanton. It has an effect maybe on Spencer Jones. It has an effect on the whole lineup. I know we're going to get in the conversation here in a little while about Ben Rice's place on this team. Ben Rice, a DH, first base, catching. Well, if Judge has to DH, That leaves Rice to only catch and play first base. They don't want to play him at first, seemingly any day. Goldie's been there against righties at this point. And it just seems to me that there's so many problems, and Judge's injury just happens to highlight them more yet again. And it another step, and the last factor that I'm going to leave it at a 9.9. I was going to come down a little bit, but the more I talk about it, it's also messed up the trade deadline. It's messed up what the Yankees' plan is, what they can do, how much they need to do, right? It's messed all that up. And unfortunately, I think the biggest problem right now is Aaron Judge is out. But then every other thing I've listed since then is also a problem the Yankees are dealing with. So for me, it's got to be a 9.9. I'm not honoring Luka Doncic, who was in the broadcast for an inning. I'm going to honor the guy who's out, number 99, 9.9. I think the Yankees season could very well be over if this lingers longer than August 5th.
I think I'm just a little bit more apprehensive because he will be back, and I do think
How effective will he be when he's back, though?
Exactly. So that's why I'm still at a 7.7. I'm saying I think 9.9, a 10, that's reserved for the sky's falling, the season's over. I'm not at that point yet. I was on Saturday. I think we both were. I think all of Yankee land was. But right now I'm trying to temper things right until we know legitimately the status of Aaron Judge, till he speaks up about it after August 5th. If he's back by August 5th and he says, yeah, I'm feeling great, swinging the bat well, if he crushes one, hey, season's back on. That 7.7 for me probably goes down to a 5.5, and then in the offseason probably back up to an 8.8 when we hear that he has to get brace, an internal brace put in like Schmidt. So I think for now it's a 7.7, but I see how you could be a 9.9 because at this point of the season, at this point of Yankee baseball, there is no winning culture. There is no winning season. There is no legitimate playoff run if Aaron Judge isn't playing on the field. And that means on the field. That doesn't mean just as a designated hitter, because him just being a designated hitter shuffles the entire deck. And in a way that the Yankees aren't prepared to equip right now. Because the only two places Stanton can play the outfield is at home by the short porch and at Fenway Park in left field. Otherwise, Stanton is useless in the field. And it is not last week I went on the same tangent. Stanton is a great hitter. He's still a very, very valuable piece for the Yankees to have. And his contract makes him a lot harder to maneuver around. But when you have two guys who can crank it and two guys who, unfortunately, can't play the field, you have a predicament. And I'm going to take Aaron Judge's bat right now 10 out of 10 days over Stanton unless it's October. So as it currently stands for me, it just completely screws everything else up if he can only play designated hitter, because then what are you going to do? Throw him at first base? Unfortunately, they actually have too many first basemen right now. You have too many.
And he's not prepared to play there. That's an off-season change. First base isn't easy.
So there's way too many kind of moving facets to this that we're going to continue to get into as we talk about the deadline that just completely get complicated. So for me, yes, it's still a 7.7. I could see how you could go to the 9.9, but for me right now, I'm going to try to calm down until we go into the next topic. I'm going to try to calm down, settle down, and say it's going to be okay, maybe.
Realistically, I thought I was going to talk myself down to an 8.4, but then I just kept going. So I said, you know what? Let's just leave it a 9.9. Maybe I go 8.99, so I still get the 99 for Aaron Judge thrown in there somewhere. You could tell I don't think it's a good thing for the Yankees. You happen to agree. Let's not forget the Yankees are 15-24 since June 13th. The third worst record in baseball behind the Washington Nationals and San Francisco Giants. This isn't a team that's hot and then you lose them. This is a team that is struggling, a team that, quite frankly, isn't good. I don't even want to say at this portion of the season. It's been long enough to say this is a team that is not good. This is a team that has so many pieces to fill. And with Aaron Judge out, it just highlights more and more. And we've seen it already. The offense went quiet last night. You get the win in the last game against Philadelphia, but I mean, the offense was quiet over the weekend prior to that. Aaron Judge's absence means a lot for this team. And, obviously you hope he's back on August 5th. You hope that he gets to DH for those couple of days and then goes out to the outfield and provides. But it's all an unknown, and it's the New York Yankees. It'll be an unknown until he's either ready to go in the outfield on, let's say, August 15th, or he's not ready to go in the outfield on August 15th, whatever the timetable is. And then we'll hear something that it's a bigger injury or something like that because it's the Yankees. You obviously hope for the best, but right now with everything going on for the Yankees, it seems like it is not necessarily going in the best way. And my last point on Aaron Judge is, why are we doing the thing again where a player clearly is injured and you leave him out there? We have talked about it plenty of times. I don't want to waste too much more time on it today, but do I need to throw the list out there? Clark Schmidt complained about his arm for multiple weeks prior to the injury. They left him out there every 5 days. You think about Mark Leiter getting, hurt in Cincinnati, feeling a pop, and then pitching 6 more times. Jazz Chisholm's shoulder, Anthony Volpe's shoulder right now. This is Aaron Judge too. Look, I think every player should be treated the same way, but it's the MVP of the AL at this point. He winces, and you say it's nothing, that he probably just, caught his foot or whatever on the turf, whatever that lazy excuse was from Aaron Boone over the whatever day that happened. And next thing you know, he's got to make more throws in the outfield that night. He's playing in the outfield the day after. Then he's DHing, and now he's injured. If you treat it right away, maybe there's a point where Judge only misses 3 days instead of going on the IL. But, I mean, I don't know if you have anything more on that, but it's the same thing. Every time there's an injury, it seems like it just happened a couple days or weeks prior, and the Yankees leave the player out to dry.
I think I just have a quick statement on it, and I think it's just the way this Yankees team has been, really has been the entirety of the Aaron Boone era. This reluctancy to show your hand for the fear of what? For the fear of the competition getting some kind of advantage over you. If Judge is out there and it's known why, or if Judge is out there and you just say it was a scheduled rest day, who gives a shit? It's not going to make that much of a difference. You're 11-19 in the division anyways. It's not going to make that much of a difference if you tip your hand and say, hey, we're just giving him 3 days of rest. He's kind of banged up right now. Be transparent. I mean, I understand to an extent you can't be sometimes because there's players' rights, and players sometimes have a bigger voice in what they want out there and not. But there's clearly an institutional and a team-wide issue when this is the same thing every season. And it's the same thing for the same guys, it feels like. It's not just the biggest stars, it's just the homegrown guys, the guys they feel the need to protect, the Volpes of the world, the Schmidts of the world, the guys that play a pivotal part, in the bullpen, whether that's, Johnny Lasagna 3 years ago or right now going to a Mark Leiter or a Tim Hill or somebody of that example. It just feels like this is a team that is so caught up with keeping their cards close to the vest that then they kind of pigeonhole themselves. Because if you sit Judge for 3 days without explanation, everybody's going to go in disarray. Every reporter, it's New York, is going to ask, why is the AL MVP favorite not playing? But if you get out there and say, hey, listen, Judge's a little banged up. We're going to give him 3 days rest. We're going to see how he is after that. Ultimately, if he's still not great, yeah, he might hop on the IL. We'll take your questions. And it's going to be, how long has this been going on? Oh, well, we saw it last night. We're just going to give him a day's rest. It isn't just he winced and come up with some BS story about him banging his toe. The reality is that this team tries so hard to be this institution that keeps everything close to the vest sometimes that they hurt themselves in turn because of it.
I mean, I compare it to the hockey team I root for. I know we root for different teams, but Lou Lamoriello, when he was the Islanders general manager, wouldn't let anything leak out. And it was, the no injury, no trade. You just found out from the Islanders, probably an hour after everything happened. The Yankees, they seem to try to want to be similar, where these rumors don't leak out or these injuries don't leak out. But they're just not, first of all, they're not good at it because there's sources giving, Jack Curry, Joel Sherman, Jeff Passan, all the information anyway. So it all gets out regardless. And, it's obvious because when you see a guy wince in the outfield after a throw and then all of his throws after that are weak anyway, clearly something's wrong with the guy. But it's bad, and it's kind of getting to the point where it's medical malpractice.
For a team that always says it's right in front of us, why don't you get out in front of it? Get out in front of the story. It's not that hard. And you're right. We root for these teams. One of the biggest examples of it is with our alma mater. They do the same thing. And obviously that's a completely different predicament because it's college sports and all the blue bloods do that. But think of how many other sports teams play this same game. It's so much easier to just get out in front of it for a team that lives by the phrase, it's right in front of us. No, it's not right in front of you. It comes to bite you in the ass every time.
You know what's crazy is we actually haven't heard that phrase in a while. So clearly it's not all right in front of the Yankees. And I think
that's up on them every time.
That's how we get on to our next topic here. I mean, we're heated. It's not really a fun time to be a Yankee fan right now, and this deadline is part of the reason why. Now, that being said, the Yankees have already gone out and made some moves. They acquire Ryan McMahon from Colorado. They acquire Ahmed Rosario. We'll get into the trade details in a little while, but the Yankees get a third baseman. They get an infielder or utility player. He can play some outfield. And it's to the point where right now they need pitching. And that's where the Yankees are. They need pitching. And how are they going to get it? That's where we're going to go first. We'll get to the pitchers in a little while. But how do they get it? Because you have to look at this current roster and you have to say that guys have to leave. 26 men are allowed on the roster. And if you want to bring guys in, you got to get them to go. So there's some big issues, some glaring problems with the Yankees. We've already mentioned Ben Rice and Paul Goldschmidt for first base, and you can add Ben Rice to the DH platoon with Giancarlo Stanton, even though at this point the Yankees aren't playing Ben Rice, and rightfully so. He's been bad, but so has Paul Goldschmidt. You could pull up the stats, and I mean, it's been pretty bad for the Yankee lineup. Paul Goldschmidt is batting 190, a 261 on base percentage, 190 slugging over his last 7. For Ben Rice, talking about a 208 average, 309 on base percentage, and 385 slugging, not over his last 7, not even over his last 15. His last 30 games, those are the numbers for Ben Rice, batting just 208 over that stretch. As Dylan decides to drop something over there, I'm assuming that was his water bottle. Nope, maybe not. Anyway, he's so fired. He's so fired up. He's dropping stuff. I mean, this is pretty incredible. And so Ben Rice doesn't really have a spot on the Yankees. There's been rumors about Rice leaving, and the only way you really can keep him is if JC Escarra leaves. And this Aaron Judge injury actually complicates it more when you think about it, because you could have kept Rice and Escarra on the roster like you've been able to do. But if Judge is a glorified DH and Stanton's a pinch hitter, and you're not getting them off the roster, you're going to have to get Escarra or Rice off the roster. Dylan, of those two, come August 1st or come our live show Thursday at 6 o'clock on YouTube, who's on the Yankees? Is it Escarra or is it Rice? Or both or neither?
I think I'll expand it in a second when we have the other conversation about the position you're ready to get real heated about. I think it's one of the two. It's potentially both, but I think the reality is that it's going to end up being Ben Rice. I think that this team values Rice. I think whether it's just because he's kind of become a fan favorite of sorts over this course of the year, and even a little bit of the stint with Red Sox, that Red Sox series at home around the 4th last year. I think another part of it is simply that for some reason, he's batting 220, but he's been solid defensively, and he's kind of one of those guys who's just been capable. And there are not that many capable catchers who can hit at that kind of rate, but also, and 220 for a catcher is pretty solid, I would say. It's kind of average, maybe slightly above average, but it's solid. And he's also pretty solid defensively. So I think it's JC who goes. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's been some smoke around him for some time now as a trade candidate, long before there was those rumblings about Rice, Grisham, Dominguez, any of these other guys who could be part of the trade packages. So I think it's JC. I think there's a lot of teams that could use a capable platoon catcher, or even just a capable starter. And I think there's a lot that they could get for that. I don't know whether it's 2 arms out of the prospects for a team out of a farm system, whether it's a bat and an arm, whether it's another major league player, whether it's in a package to get a starter or a reliever. That's a whole nother story, but I think you can get value for him for that. He's a natural catcher too, whereas Rice was a catcher. He's played first base. He's played DH. He's kind of been all over in the Yankees organization since Somerset a couple years ago. So I think for JC, it's a true catcher. It's your true potential backup, but in a lot of cases for a lot of teams, he could be the starter. So I think it's JC who's gone come August 1st. I think there's a chance neither of them go, but I think JC's the one who's more likely of the two.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the boat where I'm kind of seeing now more that neither of them are going to go. I think maybe, if anything, Escarra gets optioned down to AAA and you keep Rice on the roster. But honestly, if one of them is going to be traded, in my opinion, it's going to be Ben Rice. Ben Rice's numbers, I just gave them to you. But realistically, it's how the Yankees have utilized him over the last stretch or so of games. The last night against a righty, they have Paul Goldschmidt go out there and go 0 for 4, 0 for 5, whatever he went yesterday. Again today against a righty, Paul Goldschmidt's out there. Ben Rice isn't getting playing time, and I think they're doing that to protect him from injury, and I think they're doing that to protect him from his bad performance that I just highlighted over his last 30 games. Unfortunately, you and I, when we first, re-upped this podcast this summer, we were talking about Ben Rice being an unlucky guy. Eventually, it's all going to click. Well, it hasn't. And at some point, you have to realize that this isn't just a trend. It wasn't just a 7-game trend. It wasn't just a 15-game trend. We're talking 30 games at this point, even more if you really want to go deep down into it. But MLB.com gives it to you 7, 15, and 30. And I wasn't digging past it because I didn't want to get any more worse on those numbers of Ben Rice right now. But just the way the Yankees have utilized him, I think Ben Rice is off this team. If either of them are gone, again, I'm kind of leaning more towards the point where Rice might be on the major league roster and Escara back down to AAA, but I think Ben Rice holds a little bit more value too. He's younger. Escara's 30. He was an Uber driver, turned into a catcher at spring training or a couple years ago and really made that impact that he couldn't be left off the roster during spring training. So I think they're going to kind of keep going with that. I think either way, Austin Wells is going to continue to get his run and get the majority of catching reps anyway. And I think that's a different problem that the Yankees are going to have to address in the offseason with just how bad Austin Wells has been as well. I mean, he's been great defensively, so you can kind of ignore the offensive problems. But I'd have to go Rice if one of those two is going to go. I went with that one because I thought it was going to be the quicker of the two conversations. And now you got to go to the outfield, and you got to go to Trent Grisham and Jason Dominguez. The conversation has only been highlighted more recently because the Yankees have supposedly been exploring trades for another right-handed bat, particularly an outfielder by the name of Harrison Bader has been the name really in consideration the last couple of days. He's currently playing for the Twins, obviously had a stint with the Yankees. There's been other bats that the Yankees have considered as well, which we'll get into later, that more utility guys that can kind of play just about anywhere. But it seems like the Yankees want to replace one of their left-handed bats in the outfield with a right-handed bat. Now, that being said, I think the Judge injury should take away any consideration of any of the three starters, Bellinger, Grisham, or Dominguez, from being traded in general. And we heard that Bellinger was floated last week, which, what are we doing? I mean, that shouldn't have even been a consideration. The moment you hear Bellinger on the phone, you hang up on whatever GM's calling you. That's besides the point. You have a switch hitting guy in Jason Dominguez, lefty, straight up lefty in Trent Grisham. Dylan, if one of those two were to go, which one are you keeping and which one are you saying bye to?
The asinine part of this is that I have to look at it from two perspectives, because we had this text conversation last night, and I know you're even more animated on this topic than I am. I think if it's me, it's the 28-year-old who has had a great season by what you expected him to be. I think nobody expected Trent Grisham to have as big of a role in this 2025 squad. I think he's completely surpassed expectations in that regard. Now, with that said, I think he would be the guy that I would trade. He would be the guy that would make the most sense to trade, because why are you trading the guy who years ago was thought of in a light brighter than Spencer Jones, in a light of the same kind of conversation and impact as Aaron Judge, and thought of in a brighter light in a lot of ways than Anthony Volpe? He was regarded from the moment he signed with the organization as a true five-tool prospect. And he hasn't, outside of his defensive woes and his struggles in the postseason last year. This season, it's felt like he's coming into his own in this stretch. When everyone else has been struggling, in his last 30 games, he's batting just a tick below 300. In his last 15 games, he's batting just short of 270. His defense, yes, it has been a bit of a cause for concern. He's made the routine plays look a little bit tougher than they should be. But at the same time, you're not giving the guy a chance. His confidence gets shaken every time you pull him out. And they have done this since April, where it's the seventh inning and all of a sudden Dominguez is gone and pinch hit for. And, you said it in a text last night. It was funny because you had that immediate thought and then Rosario gets a hit. Ha, ha, ha. But at the same time, this has been the same story. They were doing it with Grisham. They were doing it and pulling him and just putting random guys in there just because, we don't trust him in the late innings for the AB because he's young, or, we don't trust him because defensively we'd rather have the short-handed guy in a one-run game. If you don't trust him, to me, that's indicative the organization be more willing to trade him than a Jones, than a Volpe, than a Grisham, than any of those guys who we've talked about in one way or another. I think if it were me, 10 out of 10 times, as much as I do like Trent Grisham, I'm keeping Dominguez. I'm keeping the Martian. But the way this organization has seemingly tipped their hand and how they value Dominguez late in games and how they value Dominguez holistically, I think Dominguez could be the guy that's shipped off based on the kind of reading the tea leaves here more so than Trent Grisham.
And then you have a chance that you lose both of them because Trent's going to get a contract in the offseason. I'm not sure the Yankees are going to match it. Now, the only thing you could say is if you trade Jason Dominguez here at the deadline and get something big in return, and then Grisham walks and you sign Tucker, you re-sign Bellinger, then you have Judge. That's a pretty good outfield offensively and defensively. But I'm sick of this conversation. I'm sick of seeing it every day on Twitter. I'm sick of seeing it on Instagram. I'm sick of hearing about it too. And I've mentioned it before about how, Jason Dominguez just hasn't gotten the same treatment from the Yankees as Anthony Volpe or really no young player. Ben Rice, we just talked about. He hasn't gotten the same treatment as Anthony Volpe. I mean, Jason Dominguez too. And like you said, Jason Dominguez a couple of years ago, we're talking about the next Mike Trout, right? Those are the words. A guy with every tool in his bag. Speed, hitting, switch hitter too. And his fielding at the time wasn't thought of as too bad. Now, you move him to a position where he's not necessarily comfortable in left field because he's more of a natural center fielder and he gets messed up. Let's throw that out of this conversation for a little bit, just for a second, because the Yankees have not had a good left fielder since Brett Gardner left. And Aaron Hicks wasn't great out there. Alex Verdugo wasn't great out there either. Giancarlo in his limited time. Left field is a position that is hard for these guys because it's not natural. Nobody grows up being a left fielder, right? If you're good enough to get drafted, you're likely being drafted out of center field. And then they move you to either one of the corners or keep you in center field or in some cases elsewhere. But and nobody gets really drafted as a left fielder. And Dominguez wasn't signed as a left fielder, right? He was signed as a center fielder. I digress on that defensive part for now. Jason Dominguez is 22 years old. I'm 22 years old. Dylan, just because I want to rub it in, how old are you again?
21.
Yeah, a little younger than the rest of us here. But Jason Dominguez is 22 years old. 385 at-bats into his MLB career. Came into the season 26 games played. And now at the deadline, you're hearing that Dominguez could be on the move. You're seeing the Yankees don't really trust him as much. Like you said, Ahmed Rosario coming off the bench last night is a slap in the face to Dominguez, who at that time had 2 of the 4 Yankees hits. And I get it. He hasn't been as good against right-handed hitter or pitching this season he hasn't been as good against lefties as he's been against righties. Against lefties, he's batting 209, 289 on base percentage, 1 homer, 7 runs batted in 86 at-bats. That is still a small sample size. And that's this season. Obviously, the 26 games the last couple of years, it wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't necessarily great. But it was better than what we're seeing this year. You haven't really given him the opportunity to go and hit against lefties because anytime you see it, you go in any different direction. Like last night when you go with Ahmed Rosario. Again, Dominguez had 2 of the 4 Yankees hits. And I get it. Like I said it to you, Ahmed Rosario made me eat my words. He got a single. Didn't mean anything in the long run for the Yankees. But you got to give the guy a little bit of run. For his career, he's at 113 games played, batting 247, 327 on base percentage, 413 slugging, 15 homers, and 47 runs batted in. Over a 162 game span, that would be 21 homers and 67 runs batted in. Dylan, if you were going for a left fielder, would you take the guy at 22 years old with 21 home runs and 67 runs batted in over a 162 game stretch?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good for a guy who, is our age, supposed to just be out of college. Obviously didn't go the college route, but I mean, those are good numbers for a guy as young as Dominguez. And he showed signs of being even better than that. You look at what he's done against righties, batting 278 with a 350 on base percentage, 8 homers and 29 runs batted in 212 at-bats. Remember, it was a slow start for Dominguez against every pitcher, right? Against lefties and righties. He picked it up against righties a lot quicker than lefties. He got hot against lefties. He's cooled down as of late. But I mean, give the man a chance. He's played in 86, or rather 87 of the 106 games for the Yankees this season. You haven't given the young guy the chance. Yet Volpe can run out there every day and do nothing. Dominguez is producing better than Volpe. And he's 22. He has 5 more years of being under control. And not just being under control for very cheap. You think about Grisham, I mean, yes, he's had a really nice season, exceeded expectations, but he's also falling right back down to his career numbers. I mean, you look at what he's done. He's been cold over his last 7, batting 185, just as Dominguez is, but Dominguez had a good game last night. He's got the WAR advantage by a lot, 2.7 compared to the 0.6 of Dominguez, and that comes with a lot of fielding, more home runs, a few more runs batted in. But Dominguez, for his career, is batting 218. He's nothing special. Yes, he's been great. He was a spark plug early this season. He had that huge grand slam against Atlanta. But there is no reason to be comparing a 218 career hitter against a 22-year-old that is batting 247 to this point of his career. I get it. Grisham has a lot more success in the outfield. But again, Dominguez is 22. And when, realistically, have the Yankees cared that much about their fielding? They have always been power your way to victory, hit the home runs. Yeah, lately we've seen a little bit of a change, but that shouldn't really factor into it. Jason Dominguez is a 22-year-old rising star in this league, and there should be no consideration at all of trading him, except, like I texted you yesterday, the only packages that I would be okay with the Yankees moving him in would be for Paul Skeens or Tariq Skubal. That's not happening. We all know that's not happening. But the point remains that Dominguez is a star. He is going to be good. He's got years of control, and there's no reason to even have this conversation or to bash him every time he misplays a ball. It's tough out there. Send some of these Twitter people hiding behind their keyboards to go and, play left field at Yankee Stadium. They're not catching any of these. Dominguez had one heck of a running catch last night. He's improving every day. It was a 50% catch probability on the one yesterday, and he tracked it down with ease. I don't understand the conversation. First of all, like I said, like I preface this all, the Yankees shouldn't move an outfielder right now in the absence of Aaron Judge. But apparently they want to switch one of the lefty bats for a righty. It should be Trent Grisham. Sell while he's high, right? Sell while his stock is high. Don't let him walk. How many times have we watched guys walk, right? When you could have gotten something at the deadline. And if you fully think you need to move one of them, you should move the guy that is going to walk in free agency anyway.
I agree. There's not much more to say on it. I know you got that out of your system finally.
That felt good.
Sitting in here for a couple of days. No, I agree. I don't think there's much more to add to it. I think Grisham's the one who he's gone at the end of the year. He's 6 years older. And I think we know what Trent Grisham's going to be at a major league level. Maybe he'll get a little bit hotter. Maybe he'll hit 30 and he'll be one of the top 15 outfielders, top 15 guys in the game, but you don't know what Dominguez can still be. And when we talk about the guys who get put on a pedestal, Austin Wells, Ben Rice, Anthony Volpe, you hear all about these guys. They can do no wrong in the Yankees organization, but for some reason, it feels like more often than not, they treat Dominguez like the redheaded stepchild when he's done nothing to prove them otherwise because he has got all the tools in his bag. Outside of the defense, he hasn't demonstrated anything else isn't coming along. And for a 22-year-old prospect who I think still hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can be at the major league level, I think we should be really happy with where he's at through a 400 at-bats and through his first true full season. I think that's another thing that gets put under the radar more often than not. This is the true first full season for Dominguez. So I'm happy with what I've seen from Dominguez, enough to want to keep him. I think more of the Yankees fan base should feel like that. And if they don't feel like that, I like your example. Like, let's go out there. Let's let Judge, while he's rehabbing, hit off the tee to some of these Twitter bums and see if they can field any of them. Because I know I couldn't. I know you couldn't. And I know Jason Dominguez has got a hell of a lot better chance than most other people.
Show me multiple instances of Jason Dominguez costing the Yankees a game. You can't find them. Yeah, he cost a run every once in a while, but you can't find where Jason Dominguez has cost the Yankees multiple games, even maybe one game. I can't think of one off the top of my head. And he's 22, like we keep hitting on. I'm going to digress here. We still have plenty to talk about, but God, it shouldn't even be a conversation. And you know what? We go from who stays and who goes to who's coming. to the New York Yankees. We've already seen the newest Yankees in Ryan McMahon and Ahmed Rosario. So now we take a look at the trades that went down over the weekend. The Yankees received Ryan McMahon from the Rockies in exchange for Griffin Herring, the Yankees' number 8 prospect in the system, and Josh Graz, the number 21 prospect in the Yankees system. For McMahon, 217 with a 314 on base percentage, 304 slugging with 16 homers and 35 runs batted in 100 games with Colorado. The big thing with Ryan McMahon was that he was leading the NL in strikeouts with 127 prior to the trade. Gold Glove finalist the last 4 years, an All-Star in 2024, and let's just say he has made an immediate impact for the New York Yankees. 4 for 9, 3 runs batted in through his first 3 games. And some great defense at third.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's been exactly as advertised defensively as well. I think that was the exact way I've worded it with him for some time, is that you're getting one of the better defensive players at third base in baseball. And yeah, he strikes out. Yes, he was the National League strikeout leader at the time of his acquisition, but you also have a team full of guys who tend to strike out. Is it good to add another guy into the fold who has that tendency? Not necessarily, but with the short porch, with what he could capitalize on in that retrospect, that was one of obviously my big selling points for him, along with the fact that, yes, he's, tenured through next season as well, but that's it. There's still the opportunity to reshuffle the deck when Lombard's ready, because I think that's around his window next September, if not maybe a little bit sooner, a little bit longer. And I think that's why McMahon had made a little bit more sense to me at the time. The one other thing with McMahon that worried me was how he's performed on the road. We'll see how that really comes into kind of once we get a full sample size with him. But yeah, the early returns have been strong. I felt like they didn't give up a ton for him. I think Griffin Herring, Josh Gross, 2 arms in a pretty loaded with arms top 30 for the Yankees right now in terms of their farms. So I think those were 2 guys that I had Griffin Herring, by the way, going to the Colorado Rockies last week. I said his
someone
name.
Else, though.
Yeah, that was for Jake Bird, who could still come over. But I think for Griffin Herring, he sounds like a Colorado Rocky. Maybe I'm wrong there. So does Josh Gross. But yeah, I mean, I like Ryan McMahon. I think he makes a lot of sense for the team. I think there's going to be a honeymoon period with him that lasts probably till mid-August. I think he'll go through a tough slump. Fans will get ticked off. But I think the other trade that the Yankees made kind of helps counteract that a little bit. So I like the acquisition. I already think regardless of what he does, even if he bats 225, 230 the rest of the season, that's a significant uptick from what you had with Jorbit Vivas and Oswald Peraza.
Vivas got optioned back down to AAA. Peraza still on the roster at this moment in time. Again, one of those guys who we probably could have said who stays, who goes, and he's one of the guys that you have to imagine goes alongside probably Marcus Stroman. Maybe not get to the rotation in a little while. For McMahon, I mean, my first take when I saw it, I won't lie, I was angry. Obviously, you hear everything about Eugenio Suarez, and we've talked about it for weeks on end about what he would bring. But you got to look at it past that little, bit. First of all, it sounds like he was going to be expensive, a lot more than you should pay for a rental. And I've never been one that wants you to hug prospects. We went through the list of all the failed prospects the Yankees hugged for years. And, well, I don't need to do it again, but you know the names. And at the end of it, I don't want them, to overspend either when maybe there's someone still better out there. McMahon, I just feel like fit the Yankee mold better. A guy with multiple years of control. You don't have to worry about going and getting a third baseman. And it's the perfect time in terms of how many years of control you have on McMahon, because like you said, George Lombard, so 2.5 years of McMahon, and then maybe you see Lombard, or you see Lombard at shortstop. It could be the beginning of the end for Anthony Volpe. I doubt it, but it could be very well. And like you said, they didn't give up much. When you look at the numbers of these guys, Griffin Herring, a former 6th-round pick in 2024. Yeah, he had a 1.71 ERA in 16 games started in the minors, but he hadn't pitched above high A. Same thing with Groves, batting or had a 4.14 ERA in high A this year. So you didn't give up much. You mentioned it. the top 30 is filled with pitching prospects. I decided to go through today in my boredom. 17 of the top 30 pitchers or prospects in the Yankee organization are pitchers, and that includes these two that have already been or doesn't include these two that have already been shipped off. So I guess 19 of the Yankees' 32 top prospects coming into this time of the year were pitchers. So that's, you've got them to expend. You've got a lot of guys locked up too in terms of your rotation. I like this trade. Early dividends have been great. Like we said, anything's better than Peraza and Vivas over there at third base, as much as we're hoping for those guys to succeed. We also mentioned that they've kind of got the platoon going at third base if they want it. I don't think that's the way the Yankees are going to go with it. I think we see Ahmed Rosario in more of a utility role, and you get him for Clayton Beeter and Bram Martinez. Martinez is in the Dominican Summer League, hitting well, but he's far, far off from the major leagues, and Clayton Beeter has had his run in the majors. I mean, 2 appearances this year, and I believe his ERA was over 14. He was doing well in the minors, but every time he got called up, seemingly wasn't doing great. Ahmed Rosario hadn't played too much with the Nationals. I believe it was 46 games prior to the trade, 47 with a 270 batting average, 310 on base percentage, and 426 slugging, 5 homers and 18 runs batted in, and against lefties this season. This is why you got him. This is why you saw him pinch hit, as much as I disagreed with it last night. Batting .307 with a 340 on base percentage against lefties this season.
Lethal against lefties. He can kind of play wherever you really need him. He's got the ability to play corner outfield slot if you really need him to. He's got the ability to play second and give Jazz off days as needed, especially given how much wear and tear was put on his throwing arm earlier in the season when he was at the hot corner. He can play the hot corner, and he's not going to be a significant defensive drop-off from what you have with Ryan McMahon, and he's been a more productive hitter, but albeit in a smaller sample size than Ryan McMahon this season. So I think there's a lot of value with adding a Rosario, and I think for me, it pretty much signified that Oswald Peraza will be thrown into one of these trades. He doesn't have another option left at this point. He's not going back down to Scranton Wilkes-Barre. I think that's been a kind of under the radar point in our conversations about Peraza in the past. So for me, this was just get another guy. You know, whether it means that Rosario is the third baseman, you give Jazz the day off, whatever, against the lefty, that's fine. Maybe even DH Rosario later into the season against, just so you can get his bat in there against the lefty, but also get some days off for McMahon, who's been through a hell of a rough stretch on the road this season, but also was in a pretty rough spot, being one of the only relatively talented guys on the Colorado Rockies this season. No shade to the Rockies. They get enough of it. But for me, Rosario, I think he was just another guy that helps add depth to this team. And that's been one of the biggest stories with this team this season that I have to actually give a little bit of credit to Cashman on. He's been trying to prioritize depth a little bit more. If he had went out there and shelled out a lot of money to Juan Soto, they would not have been nearly as depth-laden as they've kind of filled out their roster in that kind of retrospect this season. So I don't know. I think depth has been the mantra. Depth has kind of been the way this team's lived and died this season in the post Juan Soto era. So for me, Rosario was brought in to be that, and he's still going to get, he's kind of like that IKF type that you and I had talked about adding to the team. He's still going to get his handful of at-bats. He's still going to get quite a bit of run, and I still think he's going to be one of those guys who plays a big role as we get later into this season. And this guy's bodies continue to have wear and tear on them. You've got a guy who's relatively fresh, and I think he's going to be able to play an impact because of that.
I mean, 273 career hitter, 298 against left-handed pitchers. You didn't give up much, like you had just said. And I think an underrated aspect of it is the versatility. I mean, he came up as a shortstop, so worst case scenario, if the Yankees ever want to give Anthony Volpe a day off, which they're never going to want to do, you could have him there. Now, he was bad defensively at short, which is why he no longer plays there, but he's been okay at the plate. He's been more than okay. I mean, 273 in his career is pretty damn good. Now, this is the 7th team. He's bounced around. He's bounced around the field. He can play the outfield a little bit. You said it, second, third. He can DH maybe if you need him to down the road, although it seems like the Yankees might have too many DHs for that possibility to really exist. It just seems like the perfect move for a team that I texted you, I think, because you were a little hesitant at first when it happened. So you asked me my take, and I said it feels like for the first time in a while, the Yankees have a real depth piece, right? Oswaldo Cabrera should have been that coming into the year, except it seemed like they were going to have him be the starting third baseman. So I guess Oswald Peraza was supposed to be that real depth utility piece the Yankees haven't had for a while. didn't pan out the way the Yankees expected. Vivas, same story. But now with Rosario, you see him come off the bench last night. As much as I hated it, and I'm going to keep saying that every time I mention it, as much as I dislike that move to get him off, he goes and gets that base hit. Again, nothing comes of it, but he seems like a guy that you don't need to start him to keep him happy, right? He's kind of knows his role with the Yankees. He knows that he's not going to be an everyday starter, and he's going to be a depth pieces always play a factor in the postseason if the Yankees happen to get there at this rate. They play a big stretch or a big factor in the stretch parts of the season in August and September. So I think this is a good under the radar move the Yankees made. And, they're talking about other moves too, and getting some guys, potentially along the same line as a Ahmed Rosario. We've heard Willie Castro floated. I mentioned Harrison Bader for the outfield earlier. We've heard about some other infielders as well. Brendan Donovan, probably a fever dream now for the Yankees, considering Rosario and McMahon are around. Taylor Walls from Tampa Bay, a couple other guys from Tampa as well. Start over there with the bats. We'll get into pitching in a second. Are any of the guys you've heard? I know you have a little bit of a crush on one of these guys, and you may have tweeted yesterday you want one of them back. I'll give you a minute to talk about your guy.
Give me Bader back, baby. Strictly for the vibes, nothing else. I have said that. I put that in the tweet. You said it, and I didn't even respond to you. I didn't even dignify you with a response because you're saying, "Oh, who are they going to get rid of?" Da, 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 da. If you're really that gun ho and reshuffling the deck, you want to add a righty bat. If this season's going to hell in a handbasket and Judge isn't coming back, for the hell, whatever. Let's just get Bader for the hell of it. Harrison for the hell of it. I'm running the campaign just because he's vibes, man. He's a good time. When he was on the field, which wasn't a ton because he got hurt a lot in the pinstripes, he was fun. He was just a fun player to watch, and that was strictly it. There's really not a lot of baseball reasons. He's batting 254, 12 home runs, couple RBIs, more than a couple. He's played good baseball this season, and when he's hurt or when he's healthy, he plays good baseball. The problem is that he's often hurt. He's a guy who is really kind of proved that he's going to be more of that third, fourth outfielder type when you really model out your top guys because he can play all 30 spots in the outfield. He's a great center fielder. He's a pretty good guy as a whole to have, whether it be in the locker room, but also at the dish. But the problem is that his durability has been his biggest question. For the vibes, yes, Harrison for the hell of it. I'll run his campaign. He doesn't even have to charge me. But the reality is that when I look at these guys, I mean, outside of Willie Castro, maybe Brendan Donovan, but that, again, feels like a pipe dream. There's not a lot of these guys who really move for the needle for me at this point because I don't think that's where the assets need to be focused. If you do get rid of a Grisham, if you do get rid of Dominguez for some reason, then bring in Harrison Bader, bring in Willie Castro, however you want to do it, that's fine. But for me, I don't think there needs to be another bat added to this bunch at this point. And if you're really that gung-ho on getting a righty, knock yourself out, but don't do it at the expense of moving Dominguez or Grisham. I actually add Grisham to that as well. If it means you move a Rice, if it means you move if it means you move JC and you bring in a righty, okay. I don't know where you're going to put these guys, especially if it's an outfielder, but that's above both our pay grades to figure that out. For me, I think the bats is kind of a moot point at this point. You added one more bat than I already thought you were going to add in bringing your true depth piece in Rosario in, who, as you said, I was kind of soured on initially because they had already added the third baseman in McMahon. But to me, you're 100% right. He's a true Swiss Army knife, a true depth piece for this team. And I think you're good unless you're shipping somebody else out, which I don't think you need to do at this point, especially with Judge hurt. As much as I like Harrison Bader, as much as I like Willie Castro and some of the guys on this list, it's time for a change to just sit on your hands as it pertains to your bats and be comfortable with what you've got and target your resources in a big time way at getting a top flight starter and getting a couple top high leverage arms.
I'm not going to lie. I'm all about Harrison Bader. I just wanted to bust your chops yesterday. I mean, think about it. The numbers are basically the exact same as Trent Grisham. Flip them, right? And you get a righty in your lineup instead of the lefty. I know a lot of people won't think they're the same value, but Harrison Bader's got, I believe it's a 2.6 WAR this year, 2.4, which is just 0.3 off of Trent Grisham. It's not that big of a difference in the field. Bader's a great fielder. We've seen that before. And that run he had with the Yankees in the postseason, he struggled in the regular season when he first got traded for Jordan Montgomery in a move I disagreed with then, but and still do. He's just the same player, right? From the right side. Flip him, right? And obviously don't flip him just one for one. Add in a Joe Ryan or a Duran. make that a big move with Minnesota. Minnesota, they're on the outskirts of the wild card standings, which are getting more competitive by the day. So you have the ability to go and make it a bigger move than just Bader for Grisham. But I'm not against it. I wanted to bust your chops yesterday and then give you your run with it today. There's a clear need for pitching, and I'm honestly disgraced it has not been even addressed at minimum. Even just one guy at this point. There's been nobody, no moves for the pitching, and every single pitcher you could link the Yankees to that. I mean, even if they're not available, you can probably link them to the Yankees anyway. We've got some running on this bottom ticker here. Joe Ryan, Mitch Keller, Dustin May was seemingly the one that came out of nowhere yesterday. Dylan Cease, which I'm surprised San Diego might move on from him. Obviously, Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen. Those rumors have faded now that Suarez won't be coming to New York, and good thing for Suarez, he did avoid a major injury when he got hit on the hand yesterday. So he's still over there. Arizona will still get something for him if they decide to move him. But starting with the starting pitching, the Yankees have I went through the Yankees roster today, right? And I said I gave green, yellow, and red to every player on the Yankee roster. And for the starting pitchers, I could only list 2 greens. And you know them. They're Max Fried, who's been in a struggle in the month of July and hopefully kicks out of it tonight, and Carlos Rodon. Will Warren, I gave a yellow. He's been good, right? He's been probably average would be a better way to put it. And unfortunately for now, Cam Schlittler, I have as red because he's unproven. It was more about, being proven and being able to do something in the postseason more than anything. So Schlittler and Stroman were red. So for me, the Yankees only have 2 starting pitchers realistically to go in the postseason with. Seems like the Yankees just want to target one. Who do you go with? Who's your take for starter?
Luis Gil. Isn't that the Yankee train response?
Well, that'll be a guy that gets a yellow too, because we won't know what the Yankees will have when he comes back. But quickly on that, 75 pitches tonight in rehab, could be back Sunday against Miami.
Gil's going to be back into the fold. Again, you don't know what he'll have coming back from injury right away, but if it's anything like what you had from Clark Schmidt, there's your true number 3 guy. Hell, maybe even your number 2, depending on if Fried or Rodon, what kind of stretches they go in here as we head into August. So for me, there's 4 guys right there. There's 4 guys I'm pretty comfortable with. Warren obviously being the yellow one, the true yellow to me, but you need another guy. You need another guy you can trust in the postseason. You need another guy you can trust maybe even post this season when you talk into the Garrett Cole coming back from injury world, which could even also be sooner than we think, given the fact he might be throwing in 4 to 6 weeks, which just seems insane. Maybe a postseason run feels like pretty pie in the sky dreams, but maybe it's possible. But I don't think that should be factored in at all. And I know their Yankees probably aren't actually doing that. I think there's 2 ways this goes. It's either a rental guy, it's a Merrill Kelly, it's a Dustin May, it's a guy we probably don't even have on our radar, or it's a blockbuster. And it's a true blockbuster. It's trading some big leaguers and some prospects for Dylan Cease. The same kind of thing for Minnesota for Joe Ryan. And I think if you get Joe Ryan, you're also probably getting one of Duran or possibly Griffin Jacks. Then if you're going to talk about Mitch Keller, you're probably going to try to get David Bednar in on that deal as well. And I think that's a deal that would take a lot to move that one. And at that point, see what they say about Skeens. They're going to hang up on you and tell you not to call back. But Ben Cherington might not have a job after this deadline anyways, so he might be willing to sell some pieces. So then the other one that I think could be interesting is Mackenzie Gore, who you don't have on the ticker, but feels like he might not get moved because the Nationals are about to go through a whole new regime. And although they are very far from being legitimately competitive right now, they're also not that far in terms of how much talent they have in that farm system that is only within a 2-year window or so. So I could see them not wanting to move Gore. To me, I think it's one of Minnesota or Pittsburgh. It would take a lot, I think, for the San Diego Padres to actually move Cease. I think the team that makes the most sense to me is still going to be Pittsburgh because, like I said, Cherington feels like he's on his way out. Keller's been a guy it seems like they've been interested in and coveted for some time. And we know how they like Pittsburgh arms, Cole. So for me, I think it's Keller. And I think maybe that one would be the one I would like the most. Same with the kind of Joe Ryan type, a guy 2 guys who've been more productive this year and come with control. I like the kind of thought of taking a shot on a Zach Gallen a lot more than taking a shot on a Dustin May. If May's the only move they make at the deadline, I don't see him moving that much more of a needle than a Cam Schlittler or a Stroman. So for me, it's got to be Keller, Ryan, maybe Mackenzie Gore, Dylan Cease. But as it stands right now, I think it's got to be Keller or Ryan.
Yeah, I'm stuck here because I think, and I said it when we did our trade predictions. I said Mitch Keller to the Yankees, right? And I think it makes sense to go with a Ryan or a Keller because they can also factor in if it's Ryan, you could get maybe Duran and you could get maybe Harrison Bader or Willie Castro in that deal. And with Keller, obviously David Bednar or Dennis Santana, Caleb Ferguson, a couple of former Yankees being kind of thrown around there too, even Andrew Heaney. But for me, I don't know if I can see the Yankees need for multiple years out of a starting pitcher, right? That's what Keller and Ryan have, and it's only going to drive up the price. But when you think about it, the Yankees have Max Fried locked up for a while, Carlos Rodon locked up for a while, Luis Gil's under arbitration year, so he's locked up for a while. Who am I missing? Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole will come back next year. He's still lined up for a while, and if he's throwing in 4 to 6 weeks, right? He's throwing in 4 to 6 weeks. He could be ready for the start of the season. If not, he's going to be ready pretty early on. Clark says that he's going to be a factor late next season. That's your 5, right? And now you're still talking about Will Warren. You're talking about a Cam Schlittler. You're talking about 17 of your top 30 prospects being pitching guys. Maybe it's best to go for a rental, knock the price down a little bit, and go, a different direction than a multi-year guy. Now, if it's a multi-year guy, then I expect Will Warren or Cam Schlittler to be shipped off, right? And I think that's only fair. And I think if you're Pittsburgh, if you're trying to save your job over there, those are the two guys that when New York picks up the phone, you say, I'm not saying yes to a trade unless one of these two guys is included. On top of that, they need some major league ready hitting. Oswald Peraza probably thrown in there. We always keep saying that. Everson Pereira. And I think you still have to throw in another prospect or two. And I think you could make it a multiplayer deal with Mitch Keller. And honestly, I don't think Bednar would be in that move. I think it would be more Dennis Santana and bring him back to New York. But I'm stuck. Do you go for a rental or do you go for multi-year guys? And for me, I think you have to think about also which one's better, right? At the end of the day, you need the best of talent for this team. This team's bad, right? This roster that I went through had more yellow and red than it did green. And honestly, if it means that maybe next year you got to get rid of one of the, Schmitz, Fried, Heel, Cole, which you won't get rid of, and Rodon, it would probably be Rodon, Heel, or Schmidt in that scenario, then so be it, right? And I think you
have.
That's a great problem to have because you're also going to get the prospects right back.
Yep.
And I think that's the big thing the Yankees have to think of. I personally said Mitch Keller was going to come to the Yankees. I'm going to say that again just because I really want to be right. I'm starting to feel a little bit more iffy on that, but I think Pittsburgh is the right team to trade with, even if it's not Keller, even if it's another arm. Speaking of other arms, the bullpen. Honestly, the bullpen should have been addressed by now, like we said. The bullpen should be the first move today, tomorrow, or Thursday before we're back here at 6 o'clock Thursday live on YouTube, right? It should be the bullpen. And I know there's been floating of 1 or 2 arms. I think the Yankees need a lot more than that. And not only do they need that, they need guys with multiple years. This is where you can get the guys with multiple years. Because going into next year, the Yankees, I believe, only have 2 relievers that they have control of. Johnny Lasagna, Jonathan Loizaga's got a team option, and Mark Leiter's in arbitration. Devin Williams could be gone. Luke Weaver could be gone. Tim Hill could be gone. The other guys in your bullpen right now, J2 Brubaker, who's been really good. De Los Santos, who's been good since coming back as well. Ian Hamilton has got an 8.53 ERA over his last 7, and Brett Hedrick had a great performance last night, and I think he could be a factor at some point. I don't think it's right now. I mean, you need bullpen help, and I think you need more than 2 arms. I think the Yankees will get 2 if they go out and get any. And honestly, this is, again, where you got to go for guys that have multiple years of, their contract left.
I'm going to need a Justin Stahl here and a timeout because my battery on my computer might croak.
Uh-oh.
Stall.
All right, I'll just keep going. I'll remove you and I'll talk by myself for a little while till I see him back. I talk about some of the arms that the Yankees could go out and get, and you're seeing them right across. Yohan Duran, Jake Bird, Dennis Santana, Jalen Beeks, who we've had the conversation about plenty of times. I mean, for me, obviously you want the big name, and Duran's the big name here at the deadline. Now that Class A is, suspended for the gambling investigation. Well, I wouldn't take that gamble if I were the Yankees. Oops. Anyway, Ryan Helsley has been the guy that a lot of teams are coveting right now. I saw the Blue Jays went and got Sir Anthony Dominguez from the Orioles, and they're still rumored to have interest in Helsley from St. Louis. I think that's a guy that would fit perfect for the Yankees. And originally I didn't, because it seemed like the Cardinals were still just about at that point where they would kind of, maybe not want to sell, but I think they're at a point now where it'd be more okay to get rid of a guy like Helsley. And I think let's start the conversation. Let's keep it quick given the time we're already at. But Ryan Helsley and Johan Duran, for me, are my two top candidates if I'm the Yankees front office.
Well,
I know you want Jake Bird.
I'm willing to move off of Jake Bird at this point. He's really struggled a lot since I kind of plucked him out of the pack a couple of shows ago. Clearly running a high level production here. As I saw you going slow-mo, so I figured that was the sign my battery was about to croak. Looked over, had 4%. That's on me. Hand up, that was a miss. But following up on that here, appreciate you stalling for the sec there. Jake Bird, he's out of my he no longer has my heart. He's flown away. So, and yes, pun intended there. For me, it's got to be a top guy. So for me, there's the blockbuster route, like I said, with the starter, and that's a Joe Ryan plus a Duran or a Jax. That's a Mitch Keller plus a David Bednar. Or you need to go for the gusto and get two high leverage relievers and a rental. Because if you're going to go for a guy in a Dustin May or a Merrill Kelly who gets you into the fifth inning, 5 2/3, 6 innings. Well, then you better have guys outside of Luke Weaver and now kind of the resurgence of Devin Williams. You're going to need guys who can also lock down, because going with the Matt Blake mischief toys isn't going to be giving anybody any legitimate faith coming to the postseason.
It's not working anymore. The Matt Blake factory has shut down.
I love Matt Blake. I think
they got evicted, maybe.
But right now, Matt Blake is going through a cold stretch. He doesn't have his fastball right now, and neither do his pitchers. So for me, it's going to be a high leverage guy. It should be too. I don't know if it's Helsley. I don't know if it's Duran. At this point, I don't think we can read the tea leaves. I think something comes tonight. I really do. I haven't been able to scratch this feeling all day. Since you sent that text about it feels like it's too quiet, it had me turning, and it just feels like one of those days, one of those nights we're going to get the 9:30, 10 o'clock right after the game Jack Curry tweet, and it feels like we're staring down the barrel of one of these guys being on the team, one of these relievers, one of these top flight starters. But I think the relievers are where I agree with you. I would rather them get the guys with control, because yes, it's a great problem to have. And I would love a Keller or a Ryan, but this team desperately needs true proven arms. And you went out and got Devin Williams, and man, he stunk for the first part of the season, but it feels like he's finally getting comfortable. It feels like Luke Weaver's finally getting back to 100%, sort of. And it feels like after that, you don't have those guys right now who you feel like you can truly trust in the 8th, 9th inning outside of those two guys. So let's get guys in the 7th that you can trust. Let's get a guy you can trust more than maybe a Williams or a Weaver in the 9th. And I think Duran fits that. Like you said, Helsley fits that. There's a lot of guys outside. Griffin Jax who could fit that for me. And I think one of those guys needs to be Yankees within the next 48 hours, 47 really at this point.
Ryan Helsley doesn't have multiple years of control, but you could always make it happen with an extension. Johan Duran is in his arbitration years. You can make that, last a while. I think I said it because Jack Curry was quiet. When you think about today and the Yankees on Twitter, as we wrap up here, you haven't heard anything from the big insiders, right? The Jeff Passons of the world, the Jack Currys of the world. Even Joel Sherman had a hit on MLB Network, and the only thing really came out of it was exactly what we've known. The Yankees are in the market for starting, 2 relievers, maybe another bat. Right? There's been nothing substantial. You haven't heard a name linked outside of some guys that don't really cover the team necessarily as much as these other, major insiders do. So that's why I had that feeling. I then thought while we were recording, just for the fun of it, something was going to happen, but I could see it coming after the game. The Yankees announced something, but of course we will have to see what happens. As we wrap up the show, Major League Baseball yesterday lost a legend in Ryan Sandberg, a Hall of Famer, a former MVP, 10-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glove winner, 7-time Silver Slugger, a 68 career WAR, 285 batting average, 2,386 hits. Dylan, this was a little bit before, our time in Major League Baseball, but everyone knows the name Ryan Sandberg, and it is certainly going to be weird not having him around baseball anymore.
baseball is one of those sports that even if you and I weren't privy to his greatness, those legacies just last forever. And whether it's seeing his plaque in Cooperstown, then getting to learn the story and everything he really did, his legacy is one that's going to live on. And unfortunately, taken far, far too young at 65 years old. And yeah, I mean, it's a sad day for baseball. It feels like every team paid their tributes, whether it be last night or will do it tonight. And I think it's a guy who, in a year where the Cubs have been really, really good, he might be one of those guys who helps light that fire even further for them, and I hope he does. I hope it's the Cubs and the Yankees in the World Series. I don't want to see the Cubbies win it, but yeah, I mean, baseball lost a true great yesterday, and it's a sad time.
Started his career with Philadelphia and then became an icon in Chicago before going and managing the team he got called up for, which was Philadelphia.
As I don't want to see them there. No Eagles chance at the stadium either. That was a load of crap the other day.
Yeah, Philly fans showed out over the weekend at Yankee Stadium. It was a little embarrassing, but that's the product the Yankees are putting on the field. You see the standings going on your screen, the Blue Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, Rays, Orioles in that order. The Yankees are 11-19 against their own division. We don't have time to get into that, but Dylan, you see the AL East standings that have closed down on the Yankees. You see the wild card standings that have closed down even more so on the Yankees. Certainly over the next week, or really over the next 2 days, will tell us a lot about what these standings will look like by the end of the season.
This is one of those times where you and I really end on a happy, jubilant note, because we're not talking about the weekend. We're not talking about anything coming up, because we're going to be talking again in the next 47 hours. And I mean, you and I probably within the next 10 minutes of signing off this, but the reality,
I can't get it to export. I don't know what's going on.
The reality right now is simply this. The walls are closing in on the New York Yankees in the form of teams catching them in the standings. The walls are closing in within the division and have been really all year. 11-19 is ridiculous. And then after that, the walls are completely closed in the wild card race. The Yankees are surrounded. They might have been the top team in April and May, but nobody's going to give a crap about that if this tanking that they've done in June and July ends up biting them in the rear. It's time to take a sledgehammer and break those walls down. It might mean going out and losing a lot of the farm system. And if that's what you got to do to stay competitive at this point, then you do it, because otherwise you're going to be kissing this year goodbye. And you might already be doing that, but at least go down swinging and don't go down just laying down and dying.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the final thoughts here, because like Dylan said, we'll be back on Thursday and we will be live on YouTube 6 o'clock. Right when that deadline hits, we will go live and discuss everything that the Yankees do. We'll probably hash Ryan McMahon and Ahmed Rosario in terms of their long-term picture or the rest of the season, along with any moves the Yankees do make, or maybe they stand pat. What we do know is the front office, including Brian Cashman, are down at the offices in Tampa for this week, is what Aaron Boone just said. So hopefully the phones are busy. Honestly, I hope they get no sleep either. I really hope that they're just calling nonstop all week and finding the fixes that the Yankees need. Again, just over 47 hours remain before the deadline, and a lot will come on of it. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Bomber Boys Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube where you can find us live on Thursday, Bomber Boys Podcast. And of course, follow us on Spotify for the audio version. We will see you on Thursday. That's Dylan Price. I'm Justin Chevalella. See you soon.